Alright, this is going to be a new Summerset video, and I've made a few changes. By no means am I an expert at the sorcerer, but I'm going to try to give you some tips and tricks, that I've learned along the way. And this might help some of you. I'm going to try to do this in a semi-organized manner. First off, starting off, the changes here is the two-handed weapons actually now count as 2 slots. So basically I can have Julianos, there's 2, and there's another one, and another one, and another one, which completes the 5-piece set. What this has enabled me to do was put a few more things together. What I have here is elegant necklaces. Everything is enchanted with spell damage, elegant rings, spell damage, and I also have the elegant gloves as well as the elegance / completing my 5-piece set, which leaves me with a few more spots that I could put something useful in. And what I've done is I put the mighty children, and this gives me 2871 spell resistance and physical resistance. And I've got the proc skeleton guys, and that gives me 2975 physical and spell resistance. I can gold this out and basically get the same thing, but you get the idea. So basically, I've got 5 pieces of light, 2 pieces of heavy. Now ideally, what I would do is have this one and this one be the heavy, or this one and the head, as these are larger pieces and they count for a little bit more. But I couldn't manage it with the things I had at this time, so that's why I put what's here. But it doesn't really make a lot of difference. Now what this gives me is quite a bit of spell and physical resistance. Let's just say I average about 17k for that. Okay, I go ahead and buff up. Now I've got probably an average of 22k here, 23k spell resistance and almost 22k physical resistance. Now, this is quite a bit actually. It almost resembles, what a heavy armor build might have, depending on what you use. So that's the set. Now, I'm going to go into some tips and tricks, stuff that I've learned along the way. Basically, one more time going through this: mighty children, pirate skeleton, Julianos, elegant, more Julianos. So I've got 3 here and 1 on each side here. So that basically gives me my 5-piece set. Now, one of the other things I've changed is on my restoration staff and my lightning staffs. I've changed the glyph on this to shock damage. Now, it's given me a lot. I'm not sure if some of the stuff that it's giving me is exclusive to sorcerer or not, but anyway, it hits like a truck, and I think I'll go ahead and show that to you guys. So basically, I've got shock damage here, I've got magic damage, and restores magic here. Now, what I'm going to try to do is go ahead and show you. I'm going to try to run myself out of magic here. This is going on my restoration staff. So I would say about 3.5 times or so I was fully charged, and I think this is helping it. Now I've got this, and if you get into my champion points, right here in tenacity I've got 13% there, so that will increase the magicka and stamina I get back from my heavy attack. That's pretty important out there. Another thing I use to get magic back is I use this skill here, Dark Conversion, which is under your dark magic, and it takes basically 2,000 stamina and restores health and magicka as well. And it works out pretty good. I'll go ahead and show you this real quick. And we'll go ahead and as you can see, it comes back at you pretty quickly, and it doesn't take a lot of stamina once it's fully morphed. So that's one of the useful things when you're out there with this build. It's really important to have your regen ability somewhat. Now I'll just go ahead and show you some other things. On the target here, I went ahead and I reglyphed this to a shock damage, and it's doing a lot more damage than my weapon damage was before. My weapon damage would actually proc, and it would give my power overloads almost about 49k on a hit, but that was it. You know, there wasn't anything else. And as it stands, this procs all the time, and it deals quite a bit of damage. I'll just go ahead and show you. Now, as you can see on the right hand of the screen, where it says have charged weapon, it's proccing for quite a bit, between 7,000 and 8,400. So I was testing it earlier, and with the weapon damage glyph, I was getting right at around 6,400 average. Now this is kind of hard to judge because it jumps all over the place, but I tested it later with this glyph, and it was getting right at around 9,200 with just heavy attacks. So that's quite a jump, really. Now, these are the skills that I use. I got Crushing Shock, Shock Reach, and these are under your Destruction Staff skills. And then I have Crystal Frags, and this is under your Dark Magic skill right here. Now, what happens is when you cast another magic ability, this has a chance of about a 1 in 3 chance of causing your next crystal fragments to be instant and deal 10% more damage and cost 50% less magicka. Well, these things hit like a truck, and the cost is just, if it's half magic, you know, as you can see there, we're looking at about 1700, and that's hardly anything. That's a pretty spammable ability, so that's a really good thing to have. This is also a pretty spammable ability. It does cost some. It's not really cheap, but $22.95 is fairly cheap. Shock Reach is really good to have for knocking enemies back and that sort of thing, but it does cost you a little bit. So you can use this as your spammable, and when you want to knock your enemies back, you can use that. But either one of these, or even Mage's Wrath, any other magic ability will cause this to become instant and cost 50% less. So basically, what I've done, actually this is kind of a bad way to do it because I can hardly see. So you see when your hands light up that way, I'll show you in a minute here. It's kind of hard to see with the Boundless Storm on. As you can see, your hands right there, when they get that glow and that those little fragments around them, that's when your cast becomes instant. That's when you have to, when you don't have that around it, that proc, it'll cost you something, and it won't do quite as much damage, and as you can see, that's a really good ability to have. So if you have, supposing you were to go ahead and do this 3 times, as you can see, you've got almost 100% chance of it, as far as chances go anyway, of proccing that part of it where it's an instant cast and it does a little bit more damage. And it doesn't really cost you anything. So that's one of the things I've used. I want to outline something else too. No, I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, but I've tested on the dummy here. Elemental susceptibility. For what I have, this seems to be a really useful skill. And before I thought it was a really good skill, you know, something that would debuff my enemy, but as I've tested this, it just doesn't seem to work, and I'm not sure if I'm doing something wrong or what, or if it just doesn't work on the test dummies. I'm not sure, but this doesn't seem to work at all. It doesn't really give me anything, so I've kind of taken that out of the equation. As far as Crushing Shock, it's an instant cast, does a lot of damage, and it will it'll interrupt enemies and put them off balance, and that really works, especially against sorcerers and other types of things out there. Now getting into my resto staff, of course I've got Dark Inversion, I've got Streak, I've got Power Surge, and I've got Boundless Storm, and I've got Word Ally here. Basically what this is, it's a shield, and if you are in low health or you're in trouble or whatever, that shield will increase about 300%, and it will keep you out of trouble. So casting this, then coming on over to your main bar, I've got Harness Magic here. Now Harness Magic will give you a good bit of magic back whenever you take damage, and that's pretty important out there. It really helps your sustainability and that sort of thing. And of course I've got Power Overload here. Now I've got Ice Comet here, but you could substitute that for anything. Say you're into it with a group of players. What you could do is set that down, and all enemies inside will be silenced, or you know, they'll be stunned or whatever, and that will help remove that problem for about 12 seconds. This is good in a group or group play, or when you have a lot of enemy players together. You can throw this on them and they can't do much. But typically on my main bar I go with Power Overload. Now I'll show you this in a minute. This has really come into play quite a bit. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get into my overload bar. Now basically you get into your overload bar by hitting your ultimate button, and I've got this set up. I've got Daedric Minefield, Radiant Mage Light. This will allow you to get a little bit more critical. So when I have this on, I'm at about 50% critical. I've got Crystal Frags, I've got Mage's Wrath, Empowered Ward, and of course Power Overload. Now, there's times when you're out there and you want to throw down Daedric Mines, but you know you don't really have a lot of choices on your bars, you know, as you want to use them for other things. Well, what you do is go to your overload bar, throw down your mines, and then go back, and now you have those. Those are yours. You can put those around you. Daedric Mines actually hit like a truck and sort of put a damage barrier around you. They're really handy to have. They really work well. Here's another skill under your dark magic tree, defensive rune. If you place this on yourself, it lasts for about a couple minutes, and what it will do is anytime you're attacked, enemy players get stuck in this defensive rune. You can actually add this to your assault bar, as it really helps you out. But I don't have that on right now. I could put it on a lot of times when I'm out in Imperial City. I'll put it somewhere here, and I'll keep that on just because, you know, there might be a Nightblade or something like that which tries to gank you, or you get attacked by somebody. It'll give them that that stun, or that CC that, you know, they can't really dodge it or break it right away. Now, I'll get into my overload, and I'll show you here. The Elegance set increases your light and heavy attacks damage by 20%. Okay, you have that, and you stack that on to what I use. I've got a couple things that I can use here. I can either go with Degeneration, and that's a useful thing to have as well, or I can go with Radiant Mage Light. Typically I go with that. Radiant Mage Light, it gives me critical, and it'll enact the Mages of the Guild ability. Casting a Mage's Guild ability grants you Empower, which increases the damage of your next attack by 40% for 5 seconds. So that's a 40% light attack. Well, a Power Overload light attack is pretty significant. I'll show you here in a minute. Make sure I have enough here. Alright. Okay, you see my overload hit for 48,294. Now, it was going a little bit higher, but if you'll notice, the glyph is proccing as well, and as you can see, 7,800 there. $4,600 there, so okay, I'm going to go ahead doing this again. Okay, you had about 4470. Let me try this again. Okay, 7,800 on top of 44,700. You're probably looking at about a I'm going to say probably around the 52K hit. Okay, there is a about a 50K hit. If you add those numbers together, and wait for these things to crit. I don't think that my crit is going off nearly as often as it's supposed to. Like, I have 49% crit. It seems like it ought to be going off 50% of the time, but it isn't. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and build up some ultimate here. Now notice how often the charge weapon goes off and for how much it goes off. And it also enacts concussion as well. So it really having this on there gives you a lot. Charge weapon 8400. Okay. Even a non-crit is hitting really, really hard. As you can see, that's hitting really hard. So anyway, that's pretty much the build. Yesterday I was having a pretty good time with it. I was able to get out there and do a lot of kills and that sort of thing without getting killed myself. Of course, I'm not a real expert on sorcerer just yet, but I've got a pretty good workable system. I'll just show you this one other thing for a minute. Okay, I'm going to do a light attack series on this, and I'll show you just how much damage all these light attacks do. Okay, we have a number of 13,000 DPS just off light attacks on this set. So, as you can see, it's working out pretty well. So, I think that's about it. I'm trying to think if I have anything else. Basically, for those who don't know, I'm running the Apprentice Stone. That's your spell damage. I'm running also Witch Mother's Potent Brew. I find this to be the best stuff, you know, for magic regen and damage and health and all that. I've got everything impenetrable. I like the critical resistance. This, when you're playing against other players, really matters. Now, if you're doing delves and that sort of thing, it's, you know, mobs don't crit, but players do, so this is really important. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get into the champion tree a little bit. This is where I have my points. 66 in the Ironclad, 66 into Resistance. I've got 37 into Hardy, 37 into Elemental Defender. Basically, these will allow you to take less damage from physical and magic attacks. I've got 44 into Bastion. This gives me increased shield effectiveness. I've got 66 into Warlord. I've got 56 into Magic Recovery. 32 into Mooncalf. 64 into Tenacity. As you can see, my heavy attacks restore quite a bit, especially the Restoration Staff. I've got a little bit into Tumbling and a little bit into Shade. Now this is kind of where it gets pretty important. I've got 64 into Elemental Expert, that gives me 13%, and this pairs up with this here with Master at Arms, that gives me 22%. And Staff as Expert, I've got 10 here, which gives me about 6% of extra damage by light and heavy attacks. I've got 54 in Dispel Erosion, that's your penetration. And of course my criticals will hit for 20% more from this. And I think I've covered just about everything there. But anyway, that's pretty much the build. I've got nice resistance for a light armor build. That's pretty important to have. With the spell power pots, which is kind of typically what I live off out there. This raises your critical, raises your spell power, and your magic regen. These are pretty important to have. Something else that I use, if I know there's a Nightblade, I use these, the Essence of Immovability. Now these will give you the ability to see Nightblades, but they're also nice because they restore magic. And that's a pretty good thing to have. And of course these do everything for your magic damage and that sort of thing. I also have Essence of Health. Now, this is important because sometimes you're with players that can CC you, and you really want to have enough stamina to CC break, and this is pretty important. There's certain, as a sorcerer, I seem to be pretty susceptible to CCs and that sort of thing, and this will really help you get out of that situation. This is invisibility. This is where I can basically get major expedition, and I also get to disappear for 15 seconds, so that's a real handy one to have as well. And of course I use this as far as my my drink. This lasts a couple hours. Now if you're going to be a sorcerer, I would say high elf is probably the way to go. I've got Nord, and since it was the original character, I don't really want to change it. And I've got some nice passives. I've got a damage reduction by 6%. That's nice. I resist frost, and my stamina is increased by 6%, and my health by 20%. And of course, I'll learn two-handed a little bit quicker, and the increase of duration of any consumed drink is 15 minutes. But there's really nothing in there for magic. Oh, I've just kept this here just because, you know, it was an original character. I didn't really want to change it. But anyway, I think that's the build, and I think I've covered everything. I don't think there's anything else. Anyway, these infused weapons, if you got them glyphed right, they do a lot of, they'll really help you out. Now if you look at my shock damage, one of the reasons I went with shock is because I'm a sorcerer, and if you get into this tree here, anything you do with shock is boosted by this in your elemental expert. And you can use either flame, frost, or shock, or magic damage, but that's boosted up there. I'm trying to think of what else there might be. think I've covered everything. I'm not even a fully developed sorcerer at this point. I'm kind of in the learning stage myself. But anyway, yeah, that's a build. Hope you guys find this useful and you enjoyed it. I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.